Turn my mic up. Take it there. Yeah, yeah, on the road to the riches. Life takes a toll like bridges. Good friends become foes and snitches. Better watch who knows in your business.
Hustle fam. We are back with another amazing episode. So today we have a very, very special guest. I have Brittany Barnett here in the building today. Brittany, welcome to Truck and Hustle.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. So Brittany is a corporate lawyer, right? Corporate law. Is that correct? All right. Entrepreneur, author, right? Most recently, trucking company owner, right? And we'll get to that. And that's how we make the tie in the Truck and Hustle, which is actually, I just want to point out, it's really amazing. This show, I love talking to different people because it's awesome how we have so many guests that come from so many different walks of life in this industry. And we're going to get into the story and learn how, Brittany got into trucking. We'll get to that. But there's so much other things that she's doing. So Brittany, again, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm excited about it. I followed Truck and Hustle for a long time.
All right. Dope. All right, let's get into it. So you're a corporate lawyer, but your passion, you actually started in corporate law, right? But your passion actually turned to what? Tell us about what happened in your transition from corporate law.
Yeah, so in 2016, I ended up resigning from my corporate law job to follow my passion to transform this nation's criminal legal system. And even while I was a corporate lawyer, I always worked pro bono on cases of people who were serving life without parole, 40 years, 50-year sentences under these outdated federal drug laws. And so that work, it just started to really give me another sense of purpose in life. I grew up in rural East Texas, small town country girl, happy childhood, played sports. My mom was a nurse. My stepdad worked at the local coal mine. But all through this, my mom was struggling with drug addiction. And her addiction ultimately led to her going to prison when I was a young adult. And so this brought me very proximate to this crisis of mass incarceration that this country faces, and me knowing my mom had an addiction and she needed rehabilitation, not incarceration. So that gave me just a different perspective and brought me close to a group of people that we're often taught to stereotype and ignore. And those are people that are in prison. And I know from my own personal experience of a mom having a drug addiction, going to prison, that I was still happy. We as Black people are not this monolithic experience that others try to plug us into. And I use a quote in my book from Nikki Giovanni, and it's from her poem, Nikki Rosa. And she says, Black love is Black wealth. And they'll probably talk about my hard childhood and never understand that all the while I was quite happy. Because we can have struggle, we can have challenge, and we can have happiness at the same time. We're nuanced people. And no matter what the struggle was with my mom, and it was a struggle, I knew that love was unconditional. And that's what helped go through. So I go practice corporate law. I always wanted to be a lawyer growing up. I wanted to be Claire Huxtable from the Cosby.
Okay.
Unfortunately, growing up where I did, there were no lawyers, and there certainly weren't any Black women lawyers. And so that dream of becoming a lawyer, I started to feel like it was out of my league, like it was something I couldn't accomplish. Looking back, I realized it's because I didn't know any, and that's why representation is so important. And so I went on and became an accountant. I got a bachelor's and master's in accounting, but that dream of becoming a lawyer was always there. And I remember talking to a mentor of mine, and I said, Ken, I'm thinking about going to law school, just to see what he would say. And he was like, oh, Brittany, you should go. I applied to law school at SMU in Dallas, and I'm going to start in the fall. So I remember being happy for my friend, but also thinking too, now, wait a minute, if he can go to law school, I know I can go to law school, so It gave me that motivation, but I still didn't know any lawyers. the law school process seemed overwhelming to me to even get in. And I was working for a large accounting firm, PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Okay. Big four, right?
One of the big four. And in the building, I was downtown Dallas, Baker Botts, which is a big law firm, was in the same building. And I went to their website and was just scrolling down their list of lawyers. And the first Black woman I saw was Krista Brown Sanford. And I sent her this random email, told her, you know, I worked in the same building. I was an accountant, but I was thinking about going to law school. And I asked if she would meet me at the Starbucks downstairs. And she responded almost immediately. And when I tell you that Krista met me in that Starbucks in 2007, and she took my hand and she has not let it go.
Oh, wow.
Since. And from there, I went to law school. I went on to practice corporate law.
Was she a corporate lawyer also?
She was. She did mostly intellectual property. Okay. So she was an engineer.
Okay.
And she went on to practice intellectual property law. And I went on to practice corporate law. Mergers and acquisitions is what I did. So I was in the private equity space and I enjoyed it. I really did. But in law school, I took this critical race theory course that analyzes the intersection between race and the law. And I was writing my paper about the disparity in sentencing between powder cocaine and crack cocaine. And came across this 100-to-1 ratio in the law. So I had interned for federal judges during the summer, and I just kept seeing this conveyor belt of Black and brown men and women going to federal prison for drugs for a long time. And I wanted to know how these laws came about. And so this 100-to-1 ratio was implemented in the 1986 Anti-Drug Abuse Act. And what that means is you could have 500 grams of powder cocaine. I could have only 5 grams of crack cocaine, and we're going to get the same amount of time in prison. It's not lost on anybody. Now, the late 80s, especially, that more affluent white people were using powder cocaine, and crack cocaine was running rampant through communities of color, in particular Black communities. And what this racially biased law did, it created this disproportionate sentencing in the federal system. So even today, more than 80% of the people in federal prison today for drugs are Black and brown. So I had this paper I was writing, and I'm at SMU. I ended up going to law school at SMU. So it's a predominantly white institution, a private school, but I wanted to show the heartbeat. I wanted to show the people who had been impacted by this law. And I had a childhood friend who was 23 years old and got life for drugs. Wow. And Keon was the guy, and you know, everybody got the guy in their community, their neighborhood that is supposed to make it.
Right.
The guy that everybody loves and he's supposed to make it out. That was Keon. He was in college, a few months from graduating college, and the FBI arrested him on the college campus for a federal drug conspiracy. And we knew Keon was selling drugs, but we also knew Keon wasn't selling drugs to get him a life without parole sentence. Right. And I still thought his case was an anomaly, right? Like this is rural East Texas justice, good old boys club. But when I started writing this paper in law school and I wanted to humanize the paper more, I knew I was going to write about Keon, but I wanted to include a woman because my mom had been to prison and I knew how maternal incarceration impacted our family. And I'm not kidding. I did a Google search, like woman, life sentence, federal drug, and Sharonda Jones's case pulled up. She was a Black woman from the rural South like me, and she was at the time serving her 10th year of a mandatory life sentence in federal prison for federal drug conspiracy. Her first ever conviction. Right. Sharonda had never even received a traffic ticket before.
Wow.
And I learned in her case that she was convicted under this 100-to-1 disparity in sentencing, and that her role, you know, my clients take accountability for their actions. She participated in a drug conspiracy. She had a minor role of essentially being a drug mule, if you will. She transported drugs a few times down the interstate for 2 drug suppliers. And both of the drug suppliers in her case testified against her in exchange for lesser sentences. Wow. And so you have a drug supplier that is admitting to trafficking 300 kilograms of powder cocaine, testifying against Sharonda, saying that she would get drugs from him. And by the time I took Sharonda's case, he was already out of prison.
Oh my gosh.
And she was serving life. And it was just mind blowing to me, like what I was learning about this system. And then to realize where I came from. And I dated a drug dealer in high school and my freshman year of college. And just to think that being in proximity, not knowing what's going on, but knowing he sold drugs, that I could have ultimately been caught up in a drug conspiracy.
Right.
Because of how easy it is. All you need for a federal drug conspiracy case is an agreement between 2 or more people. There were no drugs found in Sharonda's case. There was no surveillance, no controlled buys, no large sums of money. She was convicted based primarily on the testimony of co-conspirators. And so I didn't know I don't think people even realize what these laws are like. When I think federal drug conspiracy or somebody getting life for selling dope, I'm thinking Pablo Escobar. I'm thinking international drug cartel, not somebody from East Texas, and even during my experience, of dating a drug dealer, growing up, an 80s baby, height of the war on drugs, the community where I was, you either knew someone selling drugs or using drugs. It was kind of part of the culture that we didn't think much about. Right. Now looking back, we realize how wrong it is and how much systemic oppression is there. But what I saw was I saw people around me selling drugs, young kids in high school who were my friends. And I knew that they wasn't waking up every day with this dream of becoming a dope dealer.
Right.
I saw my friends selling drugs to eat. I saw my friends selling drugs to help their mamas with light bills. I saw the systemic oppression, that came from this mechanism of surviving. Granted, some sold drugs, got addicted to the money and the lifestyle, and that's a whole nother story. But I saw the systemic oppression from it. And then when I learned the laws and how these laws are locking people up for life, there's no parole in the federal system.
Right.
Life is life. My friend, Keon, Sharonda Jones was set to die in prison. And so I learned that this life without parole, we got to remember, it's the second most severe penalty permitted by law in America, other than the death penalty. And it screams a person is beyond hope, beyond redemption, and it truly suffocates mass potential as it buries people alive. And so I just kept taking these cases. I was working as a corporate lawyer, kept taking these cases pro bono on the side. I took Sharonda Jones's case, kept finding out there was no avenue for us to get her out of prison through the court.
Okay.
The laws were starting to change. People were starting to see that this 100-to-1 ratio was unjust and racially biased. Supreme Court was changing laws. United States Sentencing Commission was changing federal drug laws, making it to where people with crack cocaine convictions weren't getting as harsh penalties. But then these laws weren't retroactive, which means they weren't reaching back to help people that were already suffering.
Right.
And I'm thinking, now, wait a minute, if the law is wrong today, it was wrong yesterday.
That's a fact.
It wasn't making any sense to me. And so we have people serving life sentences today for drugs under yesterday's drug laws. And I had to get honest with myself with Sharonda, because part of it, I was like, damn, did I just get her hopes up just to let her down?
Right.
Like, she's serving life. Her whole family got caught up in this conspiracy. Her mama, who was quadriplegic, paralyzed from the neck down, received 17 years on this case. Sharonda was incarcerated with her mama. We go through the years of trying to get her free. Her mom dies in prison. It was so much happening, And
Hold on. Why was mom involved in the case?
Mom was involved in the case, in my opinion, because she wouldn't give up information on her kids.
Got you.
Her son was certainly selling drugs from her home, and drugs were found in her backyard that her son put there.
Right.
She had been paralyzed since the 70s.
And they locked a quadriplegic mother up for 17 years?
In federal prison.
Okay.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah. This is how we're devastating families. So Sharonda's in prison with her mom for 12 years. And then her mom passes away from a staph infection in prison. And so I'm taking these cases and I'm realizing the only way I'm going to get Sharonda free is through executive clemency from the President of the United States of America. And what clemency is, it's where justice meets mercy. And it's an exclusive power granted to the president by the Constitution. And at the time, President Barack Obama was in office. And so I went on this journey to petition President Obama, prepare a clemency petition to show the heartbeat, to show the woman who was Sharonda Jones that was in prison. And her petition was filed for 2 years. I worked on Sharonda's case for 6 years. And on December 18, 2015, President Obama granted her clemency.
Wow.
And saved her life. So after 16 years and 9 months, Sharonda Jones was coming home. And during this time, I was on an upward track on my career. You know, I was working on a deal. We were acquiring a company in Brazil. You know, it was fast paced. It was fun. The money was nice, you know, but then I just felt this pull towards helping to get as many people out of prison as possible before President Obama left. Under this clemency initiative he had started for people who were serving these harsh drug sentences. And so I ended up meeting another client named Corey Jacobs. He was serving 16 life sentences. And
16, wow.
16 for drugs. First time arrested. He was from New York, went to college in Virginia, got caught up in Virginia. And when I was first reached out to take Corey's case, I said no. You know, at the time, Sharonda hadn't gotten free yet. And I had other clients get free before Sharonda. And it was just tough, you know, to know that she was still set to die there. And the day that Sharonda got the clemency, Corey's people reached back out to me. And I said, okay, you know, I'll talk to him. And I was sold. I talked to Corey for probably 30 minutes on a legal call. And I could feel so much potential,
right?
So much human ingenuity in him. This nation needed to thrive. And so I went to visit Corey. He was at United States Penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana. And he was teaching me from prison how to meditate.
Okay.
Because I was working on these corporate deals and it was intense. And then I'm trying to get people out of prison at night. And I went to visit him. And what was always so mind-blowing with Sharonda and Corey and my other clients was how positive they were facing a reality that would be unbearable for many.
Yeah.
And teaching me and empowering me. And Corey was in the visit and he's talking, he's animated, you know, and he's telling me about meditation. And he said that he had read that nature can enhance the meditation experience, but he hadn't seen a tree in years because he's at a maximum security prison and there's like a 12-foot concrete wall surrounding the prison yard and there's no trees on the yard.
Right. And
I don't remember nothing else Corey said because I couldn't move past the fact he had not seen a tree. Yeah. And I left that prison visit just empowered. I wanted to use my platform as a lawyer for the greater good. I drove back to Indianapolis to the airport and took in every fucking tree that I saw. I still do. You know, I look at trees, you know, what a privilege that is for us.
Right.
And so I went back and I went to talk to my dad about this thought of resigning from corporate law. I'm doing really well. Salary upwards, you know, $300,000 a year. I'm young. I'm enjoying being financially secure. And I had an obligation too, I felt, to blaze a trail for other Black women and girls to follow me and be in these boardrooms and have a seat at the table. And my dad said, you know, Brittany, don't worry so much about the challenges, but imagine the possibilities instead. Yeah. And he said, I think you already know the decision. And I did. I waited till I got my bonus at the end of the year because it was going to last me another year.
Right.
And I resigned and I hit the ground running, working to get as many people as possible. Corey Jacobs received clemency 10 months later from President Barack Obama. And I had 7 clients who received clemency from Obama. And then I've had 2 clients who've received clemency from from Donald Trump, including Alice Marie Johnson. And Corey Jacobs, Sharonda Jones, and we co-founded the Buried Alive Project. And through that organization, we work to free people who were sentenced to life without parole under these outdated federal drug laws. And we freed dozens of men and women to date. And nothing gives me a greater joy, than seeing them live their life after life. Sharonda's doing amazing. She was a cook. She had her own restaurant before she went to prison. Entrepreneur for sure. Wow. Her dream was to have her own food truck.
Okay.
And she's going to hire formerly incarcerated people to work at the food truck because she saw how difficult it was for them to get jobs from the halfway house. And you got to have a job while you're at the halfway house. And so I invested in her food truck a couple of months ago. She's designing the inside.
Okay.
It's gonna be called Fed Up with the system.
I like that.
Fed Up with the feds.
Yeah, I like that.
You're going to have your bellies fed with some good food. Oh. Corey's doing amazing. He's turns out to be Diddy's best friend.
Okay.
So he works as senior advisor to the chairman of Combs Enterprises. And he's just living his best life. And I tell people all the time, Diddy has a lot of friends, right? Corey's not his right-hand man because he's his friend. He's there because he possesses this brilliance and genius that Puff sees.
100%.
Yeah. And I, with all my clients, I started to see just so much untapped genius and potential. One of my clients, Chris Young, he's still in prison. We're working to get him free. 22 years old, arrested, ultimately sentenced to life without parole. Grew up in suffocating poverty in Clarksville, Tennessee. Brother committed suicide. Mother was addicted to drugs. And Chris is a victim of this 3 strikes law. His 2 drug priors were for when he was a teenager, and the quantity for both priors was like way less than 3 pennies. And he got mandatory life on the federal level. So much genius there. And I started talking to him. The federal judge in Chris Young's case resigned from the bench because he was so disturbed with having to hand out these mandatory life sentences. And the federal judge, that's a lifetime appointment.
Yeah.
The federal judge, Judge Kevin Sharp, he works with me now on Chris Young's case, trying to work to get him freed. And Chris just was so obsessed with technology and artificial intelligence. And I started sending him magazines, and he taught himself how to code from prison without a computer. And I connected him to a friend of mine who was a global programmer. And my friend was so impressed that Chris could speak in Python, a coding language, and Chris has an idea for an app that would help identify people who were suicidal because his brother committed suicide. Oh, wow. And it just shows, as my friend Glenn Martin always says, the people closest to the problem are closest to the solutions. They're just the furthest away from the power and the resources.
Yes.
And I started to think, wow, we're getting all these people from prison. I'm seeing personally this genius. And I realized we can't keep rescuing people from prison and restoring them to poverty. And I'm always pondering my highest and best use. What is my highest and best use as a human being on this earth? And I'm wanting to merge my corporate experience with my passion to transform the system. And so now I'm just holding this vision of sustainable liberation. How can I help create sustainable liberation that includes economic liberation, so that when people are getting out of prison, they're put in positions to thrive and not just survive, focus on equity, making sure formerly incarcerated people at the center of any movement surrounding them and at the table. Because when you look at it, and I look at it from my perspective and my experience, taking away the illegal product, the drugs, my clients are entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs in it to the extent that they could probably run Fortune 500 companies. Right. They were running Fortune 500 companies. It was just an illegal product. And just thinking of how can I work to get them access to legitimate economy, access to capital and resources. And so that's where I am now, and that's how I started, to learn about trucking, and here I am today, really from businessmen, and those are my clients who served a lot of time for selling drugs.
Right. Wow. So first of all, I want to say thank you for your work because what you're doing is so important. To begin with, it's such a selfless act that you did, and such a selfless journey that you embarked on to actually put your career to the side where you were making good money, making a way for yourself, a career that most people would dream of, and you actually took the time to reach back, into the community and help these people and find all this untapped potential. You know what I mean? That like you said is literally buried alive. So thank you so much for that. That is dope. This is a really dope story. I want to kind of get into unpacking some of that a little bit, if you don't mind. When you are attempting to free someone, right? And you said you had to go through Obama, you had to go through clemency. What type of things do you have to prove? Like what? Because you obviously have to disprove some of the notions that's already out there about this person that would um, mean that they would have to serve life in prison. What are you proving? What are you showing in order to get them out of prison? How does that work?
I'm showing the heartbeat. I'm showing that my clients have been on this remarkable path of rehabilitation, that they accept responsibility for the far reaching impact of their actions, that they work daily on self improvement, even while facing the possibility of never ever breathing air as a free person again. They have made a difference in the prison to other people in prison around them. They have families. I tell their journeys up into incarceration and humanize them in that respect. And then I share their goals and dreams upon release and
Okay.
how they can be a positive asset to society. We talk about changing the laws and systemic change, and we have to change these laws. It is beyond legitimate debate that this nation's criminal legal system is racist. And I want people to realize that systemic change don't always got to come from Capitol Hill. It don't always have to come from Congress. The people we're freeing are creating systemic change. We're setting forth a movement of power and dignity that is full of people that are going to positively impact everybody they meet in the future. And I'm really wanting to show on those petitions that potential, that wasted human capital, that waste of taxpayer dollars, and the human potential that this nation needs. It needs.
How are you received by your peers in the legal community or other attorneys for doing this type of work?
Very well, very well. I have a lot of support from other attorneys, pat me on the back, great job, admirable the work that I'm doing, but for me is y'all need to come help. It doesn't matter what type of law you practice. Every lawyer should be a civil rights attorney, and I'm grateful that I have been used as a vessel to help free dozens of men and women who were set to die in prison. And I want to build this super team of lawyers to help. There's not many professions where you could actually save somebody's life.
Right.
And the work that we do is life saving. And it's something that I feel I'm supposed to do. I mentioned growing up in rural East Texas and very close to my grandparents, and they had a pond in front of their house. I would go fishing with my grandpa a lot. And I remember one day, I'd always been smart in school, and I was telling him I had made straight A's, and I had a friend who made straight A's, and she'd been given $5 for every A on her report card from her parents. And I said, Daddy, I called my grandpa Daddy. I said, Daddy, I made all A's, what are you going to give me? And he said, I'm not going to give you anything. And I was crushed because my grandparents never tell me no. But he looked at me and he said, I'm not going to give you anything, big girl, because making straight A's, that's what you're supposed to do. You're smart. That's what you're supposed to do. And I feel this work is what I'm supposed to do. And it is what any lawyer is supposed to do as well. Whether it's criminal legal system or whatever the social justice issue is, we have to realize that for me, I've learned it is a privilege and an honor for me to do this work, from having my clients trust me with their very lives. And it's something I don't take lightly. And so
Yeah.
I approach each case taking my lived experience and combining it with my legal experience to unchain genius into this world.
Got you. Now, are most of these cases kind of presented to you, or do you go and look for these type of cases?
They're all presented to me. You know, I was a corporate lawyer, so I wasn't having my shingle out. You know, I didn't know nothing about criminal law.
Right.
All I knew was Sharonda Jones didn't deserve to die
Got
in
you.
prison, you know? And so it was just really divine how they came to me. Like I said, I Googled and found Sharonda Jones's case on a whim. Corey Jacobs found me from reading a Washington Post article about my work on Sharonda's case, you know? So it was all truly divine. And now we have the Buried Alive project. So we're in touch with just about every person in federal prison serving life for drugs.
Got you. When you engage these people, you know, initially, like what do you tell them to get them through it? Because obviously, like you said earlier, you don't want to give them any false sense of hope. Like how do you guys get through the journey together?
Yeah, you know, with hope. You know, I don't make any guarantees, but my clients and I come to an agreement that we aren't going to give up, that we're going to believe in their freedom and believe in it with conviction in our hearts. My first visit with Corey Jacobs, I remember telling him, and he tells the story much better than me, but I told him to relax. I got you. I'm going to take your case. And I said, I want you to go back to your cell and say, I'm free. I'm free. And we had to believe in that. My dad taught me the power of intention long before people was making millions of dollars writing books about it. You know what I'm saying? Like I
Right.
believe in that. You know, we have to truly be careful how we're programming our mind and what we think and what we're putting out into the universe, because we are powerful people. And Corey and I would meditate every day at the same time. He's in prison serving life. I'm in a high-rise apartment downtown Dallas, and we're meditating at the same time on his freedom.
Wow. That's crazy. So we talked behind the scene. We talked about the trucking, right? So talk about your business partner in the trucking industry. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm telling you, I'm surrounded by all types of brilliance, and I knew hardly anything about trucking. I had an uncle that was a truck driver, and I remember, you know, his stories and ventures and when he got his own truck. But I had a friend of mine who was arrested at 22 and received 25 years in federal prison for drugs. And he served 15 years. And I helped to get him out of prison. And he was talking about trucks and how all through prison, he had learned about the trucking industry from other people in prison, and how he wanted to get his CDL, get his own truck, you know, and ultimately build a fleet so he could hire other people like him who were coming out of prison, because he knows how hard it is, you know, to get a job. And so he started school to become a CDL. He started looking at trucks. He was thinking of hotshot. Then he looked at the semi trucks, and capital was an issue because he wanted to work for another company, get experience, and then purchase his own truck. But he had just got out of prison, not even a year before, so he didn't have any credit,
right?
You know, or an $8,000 to $10,000 down payment that it would require to get a truck. So I had him just tell me a little bit more about the transportation industry and what he knew about it. And so we started talking, and he was so excited and passionate about it. One, I think this idea of being an entrepreneur in the right way,
right,
was empowering for him. And I could see his passion for it. And so I said, okay, I want to help you. Let's be business partners in this. And at first I was just going to help him purchase a truck, learn the industry a little bit myself, because my dad is an entrepreneur, my grandpa, and I was always taught, you never get in something that you don't know what's going on or what it's about. So I was happy he was getting his CDL because I wasn't going to go get mine. But I knew I had the business and the back end experience to get in and learn it and understand it. And so once I did, and I saw the opportunities to give people jobs and be in control of if I'm gonna be background friendly or not to hire people, you know, and give them jobs that are making more than just a living wage, I was all in. And so we started about a year ago, purchased 2 trucks right off the bat, then got the third one a couple of months later, about to add 2 more at the top of the year. And so I was helping provide the capital to get these trucks so that we could hire people who had been touched by the criminal legal system. And in a short amount of time, we had 3 trucks on the road, 3 guys, 3 drivers who are just amazing. I'm not trying to find wood to knock on because we've been blessed with drivers.
You definitely better knock on some wood.
Definitely been blessed. Had a couple, you know, hiccups here and there, but it's a brand new industry for me. So I just jumped in and learned. I wanted to learn all that I could. And it was exciting for me too, because I was able to provide capital for somebody to fulfill their dream of being an entrepreneur. And around the same time, I had helped provide capital to Sharonda to get her food truck. And I'm seeing, just having access to capital, how excited they were, the hustle that they had, you know, to get these businesses off the ground, you know, to make me proud. But they're making me proud just by being free. You know, that's my reward. And so I just started getting excited, and I jumped in learning all that I could about trucking. And, you know, that's where I tapped in. I probably listened to every single episode of Trucking Hustle up until like March, you know, when I started, I'm like, okay, it's time to go. You know, I was learning about having our own authority, or should we, you know, lease on to another company? And I'm like, no, we're going to be in this. We're going to do it. You know, let's get our own authority. Let's go. So my business partner and I, we're learning together. And it's empowering for me to see him so passionate about it, you know, and he's feeling good because he's able to be an entrepreneur in his own right, but then he's able to provide jobs for people. And I can tell, like, it's that ripple effect of how do we scale and impact the community at large. So we are a socially conscious company. Buried Alive Project is a nonprofit, and it has been very difficult for me to fundraise for the nonprofit. We don't charge any client to take on their case. We take every case for free, but I have to pay lawyers to help.
Right.
And I'm like, I can't, these grants, like it's so hard to fundraise and get donations for the grants. So I'm an entrepreneur and a businesswoman at heart. And I'm like, well, but the trucking company, let's take a percentage of the proceeds and put it back, invest it back into the Buried Alive Project.
Right.
So our truckers are driving for change, you know? And so that's our motto. We give a percentage of our proceeds from Trustworthy Trucking, our trucking company, to the Buried Alive Project to help get people free. So it's like an all wraparound services, you know, and ultimately I want to be able to provide scholarships to send people to school for their CDLs, and then ultimately be able to provide capital to get our drivers their own trucks. You know, it's all about economic liberation. And I say all the time, as I was working to free my clients, they were helping to free me too. Wow. And just my definition of freedom has evolved. It's much bigger than just getting people from behind those walls. You know, what are we freeing them into? What systems, you know, what can we put them in position to really flourish? And that's what is so exciting for me about trucking. And it's different than what I'm used to with the law. So it's working a different part of my brain. So at first, you know, I was just going to be an investor and learn as much as I could, but then I just dove in, you know, so I'm a pretty active investor, learning, also teaching our drivers to think strategically and long term. We are in a world where technology rules. Technology is going to continue to rule. So as you're on the road, and many of my drivers, they've been trucking over 5 years, 110, you know, what about this industry while you're on the road could technology improve?
Right.
The other day, you know, one of our trucks, we had issues. We had to get the clutch repaired, but we were loaded, fully loaded with Miller beer of all things, you know? And so we were in East Texas, and I just wish there would have been an app that I could have went on to find someone with a truck that we could rent. Or an app where I could, you know, look at to see, are there any all the rental companies that are out here, where's the nearest one that actually has a truck available without having to pick up the phone and call 10 places only for them to tell me, oh, it's peak season, you're not going to be really finding any rental trucks. But what about the owner operator that's at home for the week? Or just the day? If there's an app, so I'm always trying to get my drivers to think through long term in a way that could truly benefit them too. I have a company called 16 Capital Partners, and that's where the investments come from. But I'm looking to build that and break into venture capital so that I can help build a fund that we can invest in formerly incarcerated people, and getting our people to think through from a technology perspective on how we can make this world and this industry more efficient from technology is going to be crucial, because otherwise we're going to be driving out of trucks and the people that don't look like us going to have all these bright ideas about apps, and they've never even worked in the trucking industry before, and they're going to be making all the money and have a seat at the table as it relates to our future in trucking. And that can't happen. Yeah,
there actually is a website you should check out. It's called Co-op, COOP, Rider. And they do something like that. They can provide you rental like trucks, trailers, different things like that. I've never actually personally used it, but I've been on the site and I've kind of browsed through there. And I believe they have it's only available in certain cities right now, in certain states. And I think like Texas is one of them, maybe Georgia. But yeah, check that out. Check out Co-op.
Yeah, because that would have came in handy the other day.
Yeah. What are some other struggles you've had in trucking so far?
So far, it has been with dispatching and finding drivers who want to truly go over the road. Or if not, like we've been doing, 2 of our drivers are more regional, Southeast region, Texas to North Carolina right now. But how do we maximize profit for regional loads to keep good drivers happy?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we need them more than they need us. And so that's been a challenge of how do we maximize profits through regional loads, especially being a new company. Our authority is much older now, but that's been one of the issues. The other issue is just figuring out all the regulations, permitting, IFTA. I'm an accountant as well. But I'm outsourcing. Like I believe in delegation and outsourcing, but I still want to know what the hell is going on.
Right,
like,
for sure.
How did you prepare this?
For sure.
And so that's been interesting to see too. And for me, it's a lot different coming from corporate law to trucking when things aren't as organized and a little dated.
Right. It's very, very antiquated business.
Yeah, very much so. And that's why I think it's such an opportunity here for tech. So the learning curve that I had as it related to all the regulations that come with that. And then we had 2 drivers that it was pretty challenging with managing different personalities.
Yeah.
Being a Black woman, even though my business partner is a Black man, I still think for people who don't look like us, it's a little bit challenging to know their boss is a Black woman. And, it's true what they say, it's hard out here for a Black woman in general. And so we really have to stand firm to know that we're providing a service and a business that, is not only going to help benefit the economy and our drivers, but it's going to help benefit people who are unjustly sentenced and help advance this nation's movement to transform the legal system. And so the other main challenge has been the repairs, man. I mean, it'll be some weeks where I'm like, damn, like how many tires is on the truck?
Right.
But then you might go 2 or 3 weeks with nothing.
Right.
But when it rains, it pours. So
did you guys get newer trucks or?
We did, like 2015.
Okay.
With warranties and just so my luck, what happened last week wasn't under warranty. Like $8,000 hit us at once,
Wow.
And so it was that part, I can definitely tell people who are getting in this space to be sure you have capital and a cushion.
Yeah.
Because I can see how things could happen with repairs and accidents and things that could wipe a company out. And so one thing that we've been working a lot off the DAP board, of course, but we've been trying to utilize technology like Convoy, Uber Freight. Luckily, we're in a region in Texas. My business partner is based in Louisiana, where those apps are heavy. They're doing a lot of work in these areas, and so we're working with them, which is a challenge too. Technology, Uber Freight, for example, love it. Book the load, driver sees everything, upload everything to the app, but it's hard to get in touch with customer service.
Right.
Or you're getting in touch with them, but it's hard to get in touch with someone who can actually help.
Right.
Solve the problem. And so it's, when you're building companies like Uber Freight at scale, that's kind of one of the trade-offs, of having this customer service center, having to outsource it and things like that. So it's just really getting through all the nuances as it relates to booking and loads. Thankfully, we have an internal dispatcher.
Okay. I was going to ask you that next.
Yeah. He's a former truck driver. He went on to do a lot of IT work and teaches at the community college. But one of our drivers used to work with him.
Okay.
And we called him, so we brought him out of retirement. So he's solely dispatching our trucks, and it is beautiful. I dispatched one of the trucks for the past 2 weeks.
Okay.
Because again, I was just taught you never get into business if you don't know what the hell is going on. Yeah. And that was eye-opening. I have such a newfound respect for dispatchers. Not that I didn't respect them before, but I have a greater appreciation for the work that they do, that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't dispatched this truck myself, So it's been an interesting journey.
Does your partner still drive? Is he driving as well, or is he?
He does off and on.
Okay.
Yeah, he does team driving with one of our drivers off and on. He's more now that we have a small fleet and drivers working on learning more of the business side.
Yeah.
And how can we scale? And I'm working to get him thinking through as well on the technology side. Like we gotta be there, y'all. Like we have to be in these conversations and this push for technology in this industry. So
got you. And he was in prison for how long? Your partner?
15 years.
Got you. And when did he come home?
Almost 2 years ago.
Okay, so I mean, pretty much just came home.
Yeah.
How is he adjusting? At 15 years is a lot of time. And then to jump into just adjust to the world because we're in a new world. You know what I mean? And then jump into entrepreneurship. How's he making that transition?
The largest hurdle for him that I see is learning the technology, getting used to email and things like that. Otherwise, it's like he hasn't skipped a beat. The same with my other clients who are getting out. It amazes me. Like you would have thought they hadn't been in prison at all.
Right.
Like it amazes me the survivorship. It definitely is something that lets me know that this reentry transition can be conquered, and that we can help provide the skills necessary for formerly incarcerated people to thrive. And so luckily I have a large network of colleagues and friends. So I'm working to build from that network to help with financials, the business side of things, so that Sharonda and my business partner, they can learn it. They're learning all aspects of it, but also learning the delegation aspect, the importance of outsourcing, and again, technology. We got to always, everything I do every day, I'm thinking of how could this
technology, the tech behind it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. We recently, just speaking, kind of going back, talking about capital punishment. What just happened with Trump and the brother, I can't remember his name.
Brandon Bernard.
Brandon Bernard. What's your take on that and how Trump kind of moved forward to get these executions done? I believe 4 out of the 5 are Black men, right? And I think it's one white female, correct? Mm-hmm. Before he leaves office. What's your take on that?
I absolutely do not believe in the death penalty at all. And I'm from Texas. So I grew up, we were leading the nation in executions. And I grew up believing in the death penalty and not thinking much about it. But until we have a criminal legal system that's error-proof, there's no way we should be killing anybody. And to me, I just don't feel that no matter what a person does, that the state should be in any position to murder somebody.
Right.
And a sentence of life without parole is harsh.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about like the way he's like kind of expedited things? Like, is there like with that whole situation, is that like, what's the feel of that? Because I mean, there's a lot of talk around that. Like he could have just kind of waited. I guess Biden was going to come into office and he's against the death penalty. So there's a potential chance that those people may have not even have been executed. Like, do you think that it was something that he's doing intentionally, just like rush it? Like, what's your perspective on that?
I don't know if it's more intentionally versus he just don't give a damn. You know, like this is the first time we've had federal executions in 17 years.
Right.
That's a long time. Like, what is the point? You know, I don't think there's any rhyme or reason or logic to many of the things that he does, you know. And I say that with having had 2 clients that received clemency from him.
Right.
You know, and I'm grateful for that. But that's a part of the irony. Sign a bill that is a criminal justice reform bill, and you let a few people out, but then you're rushing to execute others on the back end. None of it makes sense.
Yeah.
I just don't think there's any logic to it at all.
When a president is giving that kind of clemency, are they making that decision themselves, or how does that work? Is that a collaborative decision with other members of the government? How does that work exactly?
Typically. So normally you file a clemency petition with the Office of the Pardon Attorney. They review it, then it goes to the Department of Justice. Several levels of review within the Department of Justice, probably 5 or 6. Then it goes to White House counsel's office. And if they recommend it, then it goes to the president. That's how it was in Sharonda's case and Corey's and other clients. But then I had Alice Johnson's case that drew the attention of Kim Kardashian West, and Kim went straight to the White House and bypassed all of those channels. And that's how Trump has been doing it.
How does that happen? Why is she able to go directly to the White House, and somebody who's, you know, a lawyer, that's actually what they do, they can't have that same type of
you know, that's the world we live in.
You know,
that influencer world, you know, we live in. Kim actually saw Alice's video on Twitter and was not only moved to tears, she was moved to action. And I've worked with Kim for a couple of years now, and I can say she's very genuine about this work.
Awesome.
And she wanted to use her platform any way that she could. And she was able to go to Ivanka and get a meeting with Donald Trump about Alice's case. What people didn't see, though, they saw Kim go to the White House and Alice got clemency the next week. They didn't see the 7 months of legal negotiations and work that we did.
Right.
Behind the scenes. It wasn't an easy pull at all. You know, I'm grateful that Kim used her platform to help Alice get free, but I don't think it should require a celebrity to be able to get people out of prison. And so I'm hopeful with the Biden administration, one, that he takes concrete steps to help rectify a problem that he helped perpetuate through the 94 crime bill. Yeah. And I hope that the Biden administration takes action to help restore a sense of fairness that's supposed to be at the heart of the justice system by granting more and more clemencies. It shouldn't be this one-off thing. It should happen normal all the time, because these laws are so messed up, you know. And so on the one side, the president has the power and authority to do whatever they want when it comes to clemency. On the other side, you do want some order. But I do believe a lot needs to be changed in that process. I don't think that if I'm filing a clemency petition for you, you're in federal prison, the federal government prosecuted you, the Department of Justice prosecuted you, that I need to go through the Department of Justice to get their permission for you to get out. Like, I think clemency is where justice meets mercy. I think there should be a process in place that completely takes the Department of Justice out of the review process, because you're asking them to overturn essentially a case they could have spent years building, to send you away. And so they're only looking at the conduct related to the offense, right? Not the man or the woman that you are today.
Right.
So there's a lot that needs to be transformed. Like, this criminal legal system is flawed in its design.
Yeah.
It is racist, and we have to completely reimagine what justice looks like.
Is that even possible to kind of get rid of these old laws? Like, what are the steps that need to be taken to do that?
Yeah, I think it's possible. A lot of the transformation may not happen in our lifetime,
Right?
but we got to do what we can. The most important thing is to vote. We have to vote. All eyes are on Georgia. If anyone's listening in Georgia, vote. The Senate race, this runoff is so important and could help really change the tide of things. Voting to put people in office who believe the same way you about this criminal legal system needing to be transformed, and then hold them accountable when they get there. I'm looking forward to holding the Biden administration accountable for ensuring that criminal justice is at the forefront of, their priorities. But also, we have to know that we have the power, the people have the power, and we truly, truly have to vote. I have clients serving life without parole for marijuana. And as one of my clients, Farrell Scott, says, I sold marijuana and got a life sentence. Other people are selling marijuana today and getting a life savings. There are bills.
Wow. Say that again. That is crazy.
Yes, he said, I sold marijuana and got a life sentence, and other people are selling marijuana today, getting a life savings.
Wow.
But there are bills, that the MORE Act, it just passed the House of Representatives, that decriminalizes marijuana. It would allow Farrell Scott to go free. It's probably going to be dead when it gets to the Senate, but if we engage in the election in January in Georgia, get a new Senate in place, that bill may just grow some legs next year, And so it just shows the importance of engaging in democracy and understanding it took centuries of actions to get us here. And it's going to take, centuries and decades of action to undo this thing, but we have to all do our part.
Yeah, that's crazy. So if that bill was to pass in his favor, he would be able to then be let go for
Absolutely. He would go from being set to die in prison for marijuana to going
just that one bill being changed.
Just that one bill, just making sure people in Congress are representative of us.
Yeah.
And voting. And then other ways we can get involved is to help ensure we're using our platforms for these issues. We have to speak out. As Dr. Martin Luther King says, whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly. And in the Black community, I think the statistic is 1 in every 3 Black men have interfaced with the criminal legal system, which means every one of us knows somebody that has been impacted by these laws. And we can't just sit back idle, because it's going to benefit everybody. When people coming out of prison are thriving, it's going to benefit us.
Right. For sure. And you said a statistic earlier. You said 80% of the people locked up for criminal drug charges, federal prison, are
Black and brown.
Black and brown people. Wow. Do you know the number of people, or like roughly around the number of people who are locked up in federal prison for criminal drug charges?
I don't know the exact number. It's in the tens of thousands.
Okay.
But I can find out. And it's on, like, there's no other place, some states potentially, where a person can get life for drugs.
Right.
It's on the federal, in the federal system. And that's the part that's disheartening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's roughly 67,000 people in federal prison for drugs. And so 80%.
67,000 people, 80% of that. Wow.
Are Black and brown. That's 54,000 people.
Wow.
And many of them are there under laws that have changed.
Right.
They just haven't been made retroactive. Donald Trump signed the First Step Act into law in 2018. there were 4 sentencing reform provisions in that bill. Only one of them was retroactive. So the 3 strikes law, when Bill Clinton used to be like 3 strikes and you are out.
Yeah.
Your 3rd drug felony, federal system, mandatory life without parole.
Wow.
The First Step Act changed that to where it's mandatory 25 years, which is still a long ass time in the feds because you do 86% of your time roughly. Unless you have life, then you do life. But it made it to where your 2 priors had to be serious. So my client, Chris Young, that I mentioned, you would have had to go to prison a year and your crime had to have occurred within the past 15 years. So my client, Chris Young, that I mentioned, had the 2 priors from when he was a teenager, way less than 3 pennies. He didn't go to prison for that. So his 2 priors couldn't be used against him today, but that law wasn't retroactive. So
Right.
Chris is, still in prison.
Wow. Wow. Let's talk about your book real fast. Right. It's called A Knock at Midnight.
Yes.
Right? A Knock at Midnight. Talk about that really quick. And first of all, Hustle fam, make sure y'all go and get Brittany's book, A Knock at Midnight. That's mandatory. But go ahead, talk about the book real fast, Brittany.
Yes, get the book. My book is called A Knock at Midnight, A Story of Hope, Justice, and Freedom. It details my story growing up in rural East Texas, having a mother who had a drug addiction and ultimately went to prison. And the book really just shows how I discovered injustice in the courts, how I discovered genius languishing behind bars, and how this journey helped evolve the definition of freedom for me. And I am very proud and grateful and humbled to say that Amazon chose my book as the #1 book of 2020.
Wow.
And I really encourage you to
Congratulations. That's dope.
Thank you.
I hear that? We got a best-selling author on the Truck and Hustle show, y'all. Definitely make sure y'all go check out that book, A Knock at Midnight. That's dope. So that basically is telling your story and just kind of how you got to the place, where you're at today, as far as, what molded you into being the person that you are.
Yes, it tells my story. It tells my story of working and getting Sharonda free, and my story of getting Corey free, and talks about just the journey to freedom and this evolution of freedom for me, as I mentioned, of how we have to have sustainable liberation for people. We have to have resources and capital and equity, and entrepreneurship is definitely a priority for me.
No doubt. Now with the Buried Alive project, can people outside help if people wanted to contribute to that project?
Yes, you can totally invest in our work. We are at buriedaliveproject.org. We're on Instagram at Buried Alive Project, and totally, we are definitely looking for people to invest in our work. It is truly life-saving work, but we need everyone's help, to help us break all these chains and restore families.
And then the fund to fund entrepreneurs who are being released, is that attached with the Buried Alive project, or is that something separate?
It's separate. It's a fund that I started, and I'm working now to really put my head around which structure I want to go.
Okay.
And to work to really build a fund. I'm about to break into venture capital in a way that I want to be able to use my experience as a corporate lawyer and accountant to break those barriers, for one, so that Black women can be venture capitalists, but 2, break the barriers to ensure that people who've been impacted by this criminal legal system are at the table and getting their entrepreneurial dreams funded.
Got you. And that would be basically when they're released, they're able to start their own businesses, and that'll be a fund that contribute to that.
Yes.
Yeah,
and we would have an accelerator, resources and people who would help them from the business perspective.
Got you. I mean, it's really awesome. I mean, the Truck and Hustle show is definitely felony friendly. 100%, man. And I love to hear these stories. There's a funny meme that they have on Instagram. It says, the best truck ex-drug dealers make the best truck drivers, or something like that. You know what I'm saying? But like you said, I mean, we're being funny, but like you said, ultimately it's the same thing, man. It's entrepreneurship. Is just, redirecting that energy into, doing something legal. And man, sky is the limit from there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's
absolutely. What does Jeezy say? Entrepreneurship.
Entrepreneurship. 100%. All right, so Brittany, we about to start wrapping up the show. It's been really dope. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before we go, We have to get your final thought, right? We always get our guest final thought, and then you got to make sure you let everybody know exactly where they can connect with you again, directly, and just go over all the different things you're working on so everybody's aware.
Yeah,
so let's start with the final thought.
My final thought, I'm going to echo what my dad told me when it comes to entrepreneurship, this trucking thing, to go for it. Stop worrying so much about the challenges, imagine the possibilities instead. And as usual, every day as you're out there trucking, think about technology and ways that we can have a seat at the table to make this industry more efficient. I am an attorney, a social entrepreneur, author of A Knock at Midnight. I co-founded the Buried Alive Project, and we work to free people serving life sentences handed down under these outdated federal drug laws. I am a business owner in Trustworthy Trucking. We're a socially conscious company, which means a portion of our proceeds go back to benefit the Buried Alive Project so that we can help provide free legal representation for people serving life for drugs. Our company is definitely background friendly, and we prefer to hire people who have been impacted by the justice system. And I'm working on my next venture now, and that's to kick the door open in venture capital so that we can free us.
No doubt. I love it. I love it. All right, y'all, listen, definitely support Brittany in all her endeavors. If you have a record and you're looking for a job, holla at Brittany, Trustworthy Trucking, right? Let's make sure we support what she's doing with this Buried Alive project, with her other endeavors. Really dope talking to you today, Brittany. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And I can be found on Instagram or Twitter at Miss BKB, MSBKB. Thank y'all so much, Truck and Hustle family.
There it is, Hustle fam. If you smell something burning, it's only a desire. We are out.
If you twisted, confused, or stuck about trucks, don't be dumb. This is the place to come. Truck and Hustle. Let's go.